Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about ego resistance when you are on your self-development journey. And this is so important because if you can't identify when you have resistance, you can't really then move through it and then get to your desired outcome. And I feel like this is a common question that comes up is like, is it my anxiety? Is this my ego? Is this my intuition? How do I listen to the inner voices? And I want to say specifically because we've been on the topic of like sexual shadow work, sexual shame, authenticity, all of this stuff. Whenever you start to poke around at your sexuality, because there is so much like systemic shame around it, you will tend to have a lot more resistance pop up, which is why I wanted to make this episode. I'm going to lay out the alchemical process of all change, and it is laid out in the hero's journey. And let's say the goal in this particular example that I'm going to give is somebody that wants to have a sexually fulfilling relationship with their partner or with a partner. First, there's going to be this spark. It's going to feel like a desire, a call to adventure. Now, your soul, your intuition, it's going to feel like a little bit of an expansion, like you're ready to make some sort of change. This is when the ego first jumps in and goes, no, 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 no. These are the thoughts of like, now is not the right time. Wait a little bit longer. Wait until you have more money. Wait until you lose weight. The ego starts right away and will try to get you to refuse the call. Sometimes I even have this with alignment calls with sessions with people. They'll come to me for help. They feel inspired to book a call with me. But when it comes down to it, a lot of people actually, their ego will come in right away and not let them take the step. It's going to be something like, oh, this isn't the right time. Maybe I'll wait till I have more money. This is almost always the ego trying to stop you from taking any steps at all. And to be fair, sometimes our nervous system isn't totally ready to go through the process. And like we do sometimes want to listen to our bodies. It really is just having a deeper understanding within yourself of like, okay, is this resistance that I want to push through? Or does this really not feel like the right time to be making a change in my life? Here's the thing. If you're ever questioning, is it my ego or is it intuition? Your higher self, your intuition wants you to expand. Your ego wants you to contract. So if there's any kind of like excuses, fear, procrastination, that is ego. Okay, so anyways, let's start back from the beginning. So there's this like little desire, there's a call to adventure. Maybe the ego steps in and you refuse the call, but maybe this little spark for this example that I'm giving is like, you know what? I'm ready to let go of my past and actually be a more authentic version of myself and find the partner of my dreams, have the sex life of my dreams. Okay. Then maybe it's like, oh, no, not right now. You know, you need to lose weight first. You need to have more money first. You need to make sure that you've got a better job first, right? All the ego, the refuse the call comes in, and then support shows up. Maybe it's watching one of my YouTube videos. There's like a sign. Maybe you find a new therapist. Maybe your therapist suddenly changes practices and you get a new one and they're hyper focused on love and relationships. Basically, before fully deciding, there's like this little glimmer that you actually have the support that you need from the universe to take on this endeavor. Then there's usually this leap of faith that happens. It's the point of no return where you say, I am committing to making this change. So this leap of faith, the crossing the threshold, you can never go back. The hero, he or she, can never go back to their hometown. They have now left for the journey. And usually right after that leap is when you're like the most vulnerable, the most insecure. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Ugh, ick, whatever. You're like so uncomfortable. And then just like the hero in the journey, he has to face all these villains and monsters and has to, see what the hero's made out of. The next part after you take the jump, there's going to be all of these trials brought to you, and it is for your benefit, even though it might seem like it's not. So this might be random fights with your spouse. It might be really triggering dates you're going on, really triggering therapy or coaching appointments that you have, like while you're trying to do this work. This is essentially where all of a sudden, all of the insecurities and the fears, this is the space where it all comes up to the surface. And this is when your ego goes into overdrive, like, no, but what about this? And you're an imposter and you can't do this. It's essentially, this is like where your identity really gets tested. This is where you're battling the demons. And this part of the transformation process of people can take people out and they're like, okay, whatever, it's not going to work. See, I tried. But if you understand the way transformation process works, you know that this is normal, necessary, and the only way out is through. And depending on how much of an identity shift this is for you doing this work, there can be some pretty intense stuff that comes up. Then this process comes to a head. And in the hero's journey, it's kind of like the ordeal. It's like you almost think like, oh my gosh, the hero, is he or she gonna make it? It's like this cataclysm kind of event where you're meant to kind of retreat, regroup, refocus. And this ordeal in this example that I'm giving, it might be you and your partner breaking up. I'm not saying that that's always the case. It could be a falling out with a parent or a family member. It could be going on a really bad date that leaves you really upset and like, I don't think I could ever go on another date again. It is an ordeal that just feels very much like you want to go lick your wounds for a little bit. That's all part of it. So basically, it's really for you to actually get back in touch with like your nervous system in your body. It's going into the cave. It's going into your depths. It's an internal mental challenge that will come up. And for some people, this part of the process can be very scary and will make them want to retreat back to their old identity and return home to the village without the elixir and go lick their wounds there. But if you're a warrior, if you're the hero in this story, you work through it. This is the deepest part of the shadow work that usually gets done is during this kind of trial ordeal phase in the process. After the ordeal, there's usually this like reward of this inner trust. You emerge from the cave with this newfound strength. Now, your ego, if you don't have a good connection with your intuition, like this part is very hard. And this is another reason why I talk about sexual shadow work being so important and working on your sexual psyche being so important, because this turmoil kind of chaos part of the alchemical process, your ego will grab you by the leash if you don't have a good connection and self-trust with your intuition. So even after getting through the ordeal, sometimes your ego will still come in, especially if you don't have a strong connection to your intuition, where almost it feels like trauma, where your ego is going to go, we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Do you see what we just went through? Oh my God. And therefore the ego kind of keeps you from the next phase of this, was just actually joy and expansion and creativity and really just taking all of the power you've harnessed and all of the change and kind of working with it. There's usually this spike of optimism that does come after you emerge from the cave, if your ego doesn't try to take you down again. And then during this time, this is what I'm saying, the ego will find a way to like sneak in at any point in your alchemical process. But like, for example, when you're going through this like expansion phase where you're like, oh my God, yes, like I have all the tools, I have everything within me. Sometimes the ego will be like, squirrel, look over there. Yeah, everything's so expansive. Why don't you just forget about that goal? You said that you wanted a partner. You wanted a long-term partner. Why don't you just go on Tinder? Why don't we just forget about the goals? Forget about the standards you set for yourself. Go have fun, girl or guy. Like the ego will sometimes come in during this expansion process and be like, try to derail you from your original goal. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. And then after this little expansion moment, we normally have a face off with our final boss. It's like the ego final level of truly transmuting that old identity into the new one. The final challenge always seems to be an external challenge. It's not so much internal, it's external, and it's something that you're going to feel the need to like defend. It's always something whack, like maybe right before you meet the person of your dreams, like, I don't know, your dating profile gets hacked, your car breaks down. It's usually something in the external environment that starts to go haywire. And that's because essentially you're moving into a new identity, which means you're moving into a new reality. So your external reality will usually have a little glitch moment, or there's going to be something that you're going to have to like defend yourself against. It's less like a trial energy and more like a final challenge. Like, are you ready for this next version of yourself kind of push? And you push the fuck through it. You show up, and then you get your elixir, or you get that dream relationship, or you have your first successful month in business, or whatever your goal was. Basically, when you say yes to working with me, you're starting with that leap of faith. So you're kind of already starting at that third step. It's that point of no return when you say, yes, I'm going to work on this. And that is a very powerful move to make to your ego and your unconscious mind, because it says, I'm serious about making this change. And then you have me to hold you through the trials and the ordeal and everything that's going to come up. But trust me, it's like not always super bad or scary or too much. In my personal experience doing this work and leading people through this work, it is this like beautiful unfolding process for people. And the universe basically just brings you whatever scenarios or situations that you need to get to that ideal outcome. There's this great saying that the obstacles in your path are your path. And just understanding that like these trials and the ego coming in and trying to get you away from the gold, get you away from the elixir, it's literally doing its job, because your ego mind and your body, your nervous system, all it wants to do is protect you. And you expanding into a bigger, more authentic version of yourself is actually very, very scary for your ego, because that new version of you might be a way better existence, but there's no data on it. And when there's no data, there's too many unknowns, and to your ego, your nervous system, for all it knows, there could be freaking predators over there, you know? So this is why it's important to do this work, so you can start to see, okay, this is my ego showing up to protect me. This is my body, my nervous system showing up to protect me. And I am making a choice to move through it, versus letting it completely hijack your system and then losing confidence in yourself, feeling like you can't grow, you can't change, nothing's going to get any better. Again, the ego wants you to contract, whereas your higher self, your intuition, wants you to expand. So if you're ever questioning, is this my ego or my intuition? That is a great rule of thumb. Also, intuition tends to be pretty quiet. Ego is pretty loud. There's lots of emotion usually tied to it, whereas intuition is kind of like a quiet tug, and it does take practice to know to trust that voice and to listen to it. And also there's a certain flavor of shame and sexual shame if you've had any kind of sexual trauma, whether you grew up with a religious background, especially if you have body image issues. All of these things contribute to essentially veiling your sacral chakra, which is your fire. It's your source of intuition. It's your source of creativity. I've created a mini program. It starts on October 10th, where I'm going to be hosting a live course where we're going to be talking all about how to transmute sexual shame into authentic power. As part of the program, you get the live workshop on October 10th, or you can watch the replay. There's also a download visualization that you can do at home to get in touch with your unconscious mind to see what is lurking in the shadow when it comes down to your sexuality and sexual shame. Also, there's a one-on-one session that you can have with me that you can book within 90 days. All of that stuff is only $169. I will link it in the show notes. If you're ready to just dive right in, though, I do offer one-on-one alignment sessions to see if working together in a deeper container is the right fit for you. I'll leave the link to do that in the show notes. But other than that, thanks, guys. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Send me an email. I'd be happy to answer them. See you next time.